You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
It was Halloween Eve, 1975, in one of America's wealthiest neighborhoods. But by morning, the peaceful streets of Greenwich, Connecticut would be shattered by the brutal murder of 15-year-old girl Martha Moxley. What followed was a decades-long saga of privilege, power, and unanswered questions. A murder case entangled with one of America's most iconic families, the Kennedys. This is a story of justice delayed, trials overturned, and a family's tireless search for the truth. From cold case to courtroom drama, welcome to the haunting mystery of the Martha Moxley murder. On the evening of October 30th, 1975, a quiet, affluent enclave in Greenwich, Connecticut, seemed untouched by danger. The trees were shedding leaves, children whispered about pranks, and a sense of restlessness floated in the air. 15-year-old Martha Elizabeth Moxley, the night promised nothing more ominous than the typical mischief associated with Mischief Night, when local youth rang doorbells, threw toilet paper, and roamed suburban streets. Yet for Martha, that night would become her last. Martha lived in Belhaven, a Greenwich neighborhood across from the estate of the Skakel family. Neighbors with wealth, social standing, and a vexing aura of privilege. Among them was Michael Skakel, also 15, cousin by marriage to the Kennedy family. Martha's whispered connection that evening with one of the Skakel children, perhaps innocent flirtation, would soon draw her into a ruthless tragedy. As the town settled into darkness, none suspected that within hours, Greenwich would be the scene of a brutal murder. Late that evening, Martha joined friends in roaming the quiet streets, partaking in pranks and laughter. A few recalled seeing her near the Skakel yard. She flirted with Thomas, Michael's older sibling, and around 9:30 p.m., Martha and Thomas were reportedly seen falling together behind the fence near the Skakel swimming pool. That sighting would hold ominous weight later on. After that, her path vanished into silence. At dawn on October 31st, Martha's body was discovered in her own backyard, beneath a tree. Her clothes lay askew. Her pants and underwear had been pulled down. Though the forensic evidence would later find no conclusive signs of sexual assault, nearby lay broken fragments of a 6-iron golf club, shreds of metal that would become pivotal to the investigation. The autopsy revealed a savage combination of blunt force trauma and multiple stab wounds. She had been beaten, then stabbed, likely with the club itself. The murder weapon was tracked back to the Skakel residence. No suspect emerged that morning, and Greenwich police faced a grievous, confounding case. The glamorous veneer of Belhaven now cracked open, revealing hidden tensions, social silence, and the patterns of powerful privilege. Martha Moxley had been a vibrant teenager, beloved by parents Dorothy and David Moxley, with siblings and friends left to grapple with shock. The crime scene startled the community. How could such violence occur in its very heart? The initial investigation focused on the Skakel household. Thomas, the last person seen publicly with Martha, naturally drew intense scrutiny, but his father blocked access to Thomas's school and mental health records, discouraging deeper inquiry. Simultaneously, a curious new figure emerged, Kenneth Littleton, who that very day had begun working as the Skakel live-in tutor. Littleton swiftly became a person of interest, yet no charges were ever brought. Over the years, leads dried up, evidence lingered, rumors swirled, and the case devolved into one of America's most chilling cold files. Yes, I do know that it is a cold case, but I decided to put it as a Monday murder just because I truly believe that Skakel was responsible, or either Skakel or Littleton. But we continue. During the 80s and early 90s, one name cast in public imagination was the Kennedys. Rumors swirled that William Kennedy Smith had been present that night. Others speculated about interference or cover-ups, but local officials dismissed those leads. A number of writers and private investigators poured energy into the case. Dominic Dunn fictionalized a version of the events. Mark Furman, former LAPD detective turned writer, would later assert that the evidence pointed strongly towards Michael Skakel. Meanwhile, the Moxley family remained persistent, but as decades wore on, momentum waned. In 1991, the high-profile trial of William Kennedy Smith triggered renewed interest in Greenwich. Rumors linked that case to the Skakel home, but official investigations did not confirm involvement. Yet the heightened national attention stirred dormant investigators, awakened old theories, and inspired fresh scrutiny. Still, the case appeared frozen in time until the late 90s, when a radical turn would set new gears in motion. In June 1998, nearly 23 years after the killing, a rarely invoked one-man grand jury convened in Connecticut to re-examine evidence. Following 18 months of renewed investigation, the grand jury concluded there was enough to indict Michael Skakel for Martha's murder. On January 9, 2000, an arrest warrant was issued for an unnamed juvenile tied to Moxley's death. Skakel would later surrender to authorities that same day. He was released on $500,000 bail and arraigned as a juvenile before a judge later ruled that he should be tried as an adult. At trial, prosecutors built a narrative. Michael had been on Martha's property that night, perhaps peeping from a tree. His recorded statements from a later book proposal were repurposed against him. In that tape, he hypothetically confessed being nervous about being seen jerking off and panicked. Prosecutors overlaid those words onto graphic images of Martha's body in a multimedia presentation to the jury. Notably, they omitted sections in closing arguments that introduced masturbation context, thereby creating the impression of a full confession. Defense counsel lodged objections that were overruled. The alibi Michael offered, that he was visiting a cousin, failed to shake the prosecution's narrative. The jury found him guilty on June 7, 2002, and sentenced him to 20 years to life. The trial was controversial from the start. Critics pointed to the long passage of time, degraded evidence, changes in alibis, unreliable witness from the Elon school, and the question of prosecutorial zeal influenced by public pressure. Some defended skilled lawyering and argued that the evidence was compelling. Still, the final verdict cleaved the Moxley tragedy from decades of silence and inertia. After conviction, Michael's legal team immediately pursued appeals. In January 2003, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. published a provocative article in the Atlantic titled "A Miscarriage of Justice," claiming that Skakel's indictment stemmed from media pressure and that evidence against Kenneth Littleton was stronger than against Michael. Kennedy argued that eccentric behavior by Littleton, prior instability, and weak alibi by Michael cast reasonable doubt. In later years, appeals stretched through Connecticut's courts. On January 13, 2006, the Connecticut Supreme Court upheld Skakel's conviction. On November 13, 2006, the U.S. Supreme Court refused his appeal. In 2007, his defense attempted to reintroduce testimony by Tony Bryant, a former classmate, alleging Bryant might point towards new suspects. A judge denied a new trial, deeming Bryant's statements unreliable. By 2010, Skakel's legal team argued that his trial counsel, Michael Sherman, had provided constitutionally deficient representation. In hearings in April 2013, Skakel personally denounced Sherman as distracted by celebrity and fees, not client defense. Judge Thomas Bishop agreed. In October 2013, he ordered a new trial, concluding Sherman's failures in investigation, strategy, and execution were significant and ultimately fatal. Michael was released on $1.2 million bail, but appeals struck again. In December 2016, the Connecticut Supreme Court reinstated Skakel's conviction, citing overwhelming evidence. Then, in May 2018, the court reversed itself. It vacated the conviction and remanded for trial, pointing again to the deficient defense and lack of competent performance. Finally, in October 2020, on the 45th anniversary of Martha's death, Connecticut declined to retry Skakel, announcing the state could not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Thus, the final state, Michael Skakel, is no longer convicted. The case remains legally unresolved, and the Moxley family and the public contemplate whether true justice is ever served. The narrative of Martha's murder reflects a tangled web of motivations, privilege, and speculation. Michael Skakel came from a complex background. He was one of several children born to Rushton Skakel and Ann Reynolds, his aunt Ethel Skakel was widow of Robert F. Kennedy. His grandfather founded a major carbon corporation. The family resided in Bellhaven, a secluded, wealthy Greenwich community, and Martha lived directly across the street. Michael's youth was fraught. His mother died of brain cancer in 1973 when he was 13. He struggled academically with undiagnosed dyslexia and exhibited early alcohol abuse. He attended multiple schools, got into trouble, and was later sent to Elon School, probably saying that wrong, a behavior modification program, twice running away. His wild youth made him vulnerable to suspicion. Thomas, the older sibling, features as the last seen with Martha. His behavior and alibi shifts over time, raised questions about his potential role. The family's resistance to open records deepened speculation. Kenneth Littleton, the live-in tutor, also gained attention in later life. He displayed erratic behavior, mental health issues, and strange identifications. His wife later described his delusions, identity shifts, and obsession with power. In that light, some observers see him as plausible, but the central prosecution theory remained. Michael had the motive of flirtation, access to the weapon, a golf club from his home, opportunity, and a nervous confession. The defense contested each element. The weapon fragments were neither definitive nor ambiguously tied. Memory faded, witness credibility in the school testimonies was suspect, and the use of the tape book proposal seemed legally and ethically fraught. RFK Jr.'s alternative hypothesis placed more weight on Littleton, that he had violent impulses, opportunity, and motive, and that he might have been a scapegoat in the Skakel family's protective web. Kennedy's publication challenged whether the legal machinery had allowed a powerful family to evade scrutiny. Dominic Dunn, in his nonfiction and fiction renderings, criticized Greenwich society, media pressure, and legal spectacle. He framed Martha's murder as emblematic of glamorous impunity, and he questioned whether social standing and local deference favored powerful suspects. In sum, the personality, relationships, and power dynamics shaped more than forensic evidence. They framed public perception, legal momentum, and every turn of the case. Throughout decades, Dorothy Moxley persisted as the public face of justice for her daughter. She confronted legal delays, conflicting court decisions, media intrusion, emotional strain. In late 2024, she passed away at age 92, having witnessed monumental legal shifts, but no final closure. Her steadiness galvanized public scrutiny. She refused to let Martha's name fade. She accepted legal setbacks and reversals, but consistently demanded thorough investigation. Her role speaks to the grief that becomes an active legal force, a moral compass sustained over decades in the face of instability. In Greenwich, the murder re-entered public consciousness through books, television showings, podcasts, and documentaries. The case became shorthand for the tension between privilege, power, and justice. It sparked debates over how wealthy communities handle internal scandal, how media pressure shapes prosecutions, and whether cold cases can ever be ethically revived. Martha, once a teenager in suburban Connecticut, had become emblematic of unsolved violence in America's elite corridors. To follow the story of Martha Moxley is to wander a terrain of shifting narratives, contested memory, and legal drama. The passage of decades allowed myth-making. Each re-examination altered context. Books by Furman, Kennedy, and others presented divergent versions. The media spotlight pressed prosecutors to act. Reporters prompted new leads. Television dramatizations, including Murder in Greenwich, depicted versions of truth interwoven with fiction. Yet narrative gaps remain. No definitive crime scene photograph or unassailable fingerprint has answered every question. No singular confession has resolved all doubt. Instead, the case lingers in limbo, suspended between conviction and vacatur, suspicion and exoneration. Legal process confronted issues of counsel competence, prosecutorial conduct, and the fairness of using decades-old evidence. Contest over whether Michael's trial counsel failures deprived him of a fair trial became as pivotal as forensic questions. Judges wrestled with constitutional standards. When should a conviction stand if defense was deficient? When is retrial barred by judgment? The state's final decision not to retry Skakel in 2020 accepted that the case could no longer be proven, beyond reasonable doubt. That posture reflects legal humility. Sometimes justice cannot be completed. Critics argue that the system failed Martha. Supporters of the conviction claim that delay, attrition, and defense dysfunction prevented closure. The tug of war between psychological pressure and evidentiary caution persists. What can we assert with confidence? Martha Moxley was beaten and stabbed to death in her own yard on October 30th to the 31st. The murder weapon, a disassembled 6-iron, originated in the adjacent Skakel estate. The case bears the imprint of power and silence. Michael Skakel stood trial, was convicted, later freed, then legally reinstated, then vacated, and ultimately never retried. Dorothy Moxley held vigil for decades and did not see final closure. What remains uncertain? Who precisely swung the club, wielded the knife, and silenced Martha's voice? Was it Michael Skakel, Kenneth Littleton, Thomas Skakel, someone else entirely? Did the family's social stature delay justice? Did the defense missteps distort a fair trial? Will new evidence ever emerge? Some believe that fresh forensic techniques or discovered documents could yet reopen the case, though the passage of time diminishes that hope. The story of Martha Moxley is more than crime reportage. It is a narrative of youth extinguished, of twisted privilege, of grief seeking justice in an uneven legal system. It invites us to ask, when does social power shield the guilty? When does legal delay become de facto immunity? And how do we give voice to the victims in a system built for numbers and evidence, not sorrow? Before we move on, we'd like to thank our sponsor of this episode, and that is NordVPN, the fastest, most reliable VPN on the market. Look, if you're online, streaming, researching, or just scrolling through social media, your data is constantly being tracked. Companies, advertisers, even your internet provider know what you're doing, and that's where NordVPN comes in. With one click, NordVPN encrypts your connection and hides your IP address, so no one, and I mean no one, can see what you're up to. Plus, it lets you access content that's blocked in your country. Want to stream a show that's only available in the UK? Switch your virtual location in seconds, and boom, problem solved. And here's the best part, NordVPN runs fast. No lag, no buffering, no slowdowns. You'll forget it's even on. And now, NordVPN is offering an exclusive deal for our listeners and viewers. Just use the link in the description today and get 77% off a 2-year plan with 3 free months. So stay safe, stay private, stream everything, and that's NordVPN. And now, let me know your thoughts on this case in the comment section below, and let me know who you think murdered Martha Moxley. And of course, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TCNS. And of course, everything you give goes right back in the channel, helps us grow our channel, take this show on the road, upgrade our equipment, bring in hosts, be able to pay them, and then eventually like I mentioned, take this show on the road. We'd love to do episodes from true crime locations across the country and possibly one day across the world. And your support can help make that happen. Whether it's $1, $5, $50, $100, $1,000, anything you give is appreciated. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.